welcome to CIVICA Data Science Seminar Series, hosted by CIVICA Consortium, LSE, Hertie School in Berlin, Bocconi, Central European University, Sciences Po, and European University Institute. Today we are welcoming Dr. Preslav Nakov, who is a principal scientist at Qatar Computing Research Institute, where he leads projects that aims to limit the effect of fake news, propaganda, and media bias. He is a Fulbright Fellow, received his PhD in computer science from UC Berkeley, widely published with over 300 academic articles, and his research is covered by many outlets: Forbes, Business Insider, MIT Technology Review, Wired. So without further ado, welcoming Preslav. And Preslav, over to you for the presentation.
Thanks for the invitation. So yeah, let me start. Let me start with a question. What is fake news? Okay, if you have an article like this, oh, it's coming, the agenda behind COVID-19 was a microchip, or as Bill Gates says, digital tracking system for the virus. I mean, I guess that you'd agree that this is a prototypical fake news, right? So it's something bad, it's something malicious, and it's also not truthful. But what if I show you this? Okay. Oh, Trump delays Easter to July 15 to keep promise on coronavirus. This is coming from The Onion. This is like from last year. Yeah, they're kind of making fun of the former president because he was promised to be done with the COVID-19 by Easter last year. Okay. So is this fake news? Well, it really depends, right? It's definitely not something truthful, but I mean, so according to the definitions of most social media platforms, this is political satire and it's protected speech. But then if you look into the dictionary definitions of fake news, under some definitions, satire would be fake news, under some, it would not be fake news. So, I mean, if you think about it, there's a difference between this and this, okay? And what is the essence of the problem, right? And the essence of the problem is something that I have been hearing from journalists that I'm talking to, and it's also summarized here by Sir Tim Berners-Lee, the creator of the web. He's complaining that social media have weaponized his creation. And that's the big problem of fake news. It's not that it's false. The problem is it got weaponized. It turned the news into a political weapon. And this is something that is well reflected in this slide by Claire Vardo from First Draft News. By the way, their website has some very good educational material on the matter. So the term fake news is not, it is the popular term, is the one that people generally use, but it's not really precise and it's not helpful because it really makes people focus on whether something is true or not. And as we have seen, there is difference between things that are kind of false and harmful and things that are kind of not really kind of that you'd consider maybe protected speech. And so at the European Union level, at the level of international institutions such as the World Health Organization or NATO or the United Nations, people are talking, and most researchers in the field and fact checkers, they're talking about disinformation. So disinformation is something that is both false and intends to do harm. Okay, and if something is just false, doesn't really intend to do harm, that's misinformation. I mean, if I say, I don't know, let's say in certain country the number of COVID cases are 1,100,000. If I say it's 1 million, okay, it's not exactly precise, but that's not, malicious, so that's misinformation. And malinformation is the use of true information actually for false, for malicious purposes. For example, in the previous US presidential election, somebody has hacked the Hillary Clinton server and has put their true emails online, and this is kind of use of real information for malicious purposes. And the vast majority of the work has been focusing on whether something is true or not, right? And this kind of something about factuality and this is to get a kind of misinformation, disinformation. And the intent to do harm has been largely ignored. And I'm, of course, going to talk about bot, and I'm going to cover more the falseness. But if you're going to remember one thing from this talk is should be this slide, that fake news is the wrong term. You should be talking about disinformation. Disinformation has two aspects. It's not only where it's false, it's also where it's actually there's an intention to do harm. Okay, so when they're talking about fake news, right? I mean, the first thing that it comes as a possible solution is, okay, maybe we're just going to do fact checking, okay? And so there have been a lot of fact-checking efforts. This is the Duke Reporter Swap has a website which collects the different fact-checking efforts going on around the world. Those are manual fact-checking. You see about 300 going on active projects and 100 inactive to this point. So the question is, how much has been fact-checked, right? And this is a statistics that I got from JESIS. It's an institute in Germany, and they have taken different fact-checking claims and they have parsed them into a knowledge graph. And let's forget about the knowledge graph here and let's focus on the statistics, right? And this data, it's about 1 year old. So the actual numbers are a little bit higher, but not much higher, no? So see, major organizations like Snoops and PolitiFact, they have, I don't know, 13,000, 17,000 claims fact-checked, and everybody else has just like a few hundred, okay? And it really takes, I mean, checking one claim takes a day or two, sometimes a week, sometimes even longer, right? So you really cannot check that many, right? And the question is, what can we do? Okay, if you believe that fact checking is useful, which it is, and it's really good for promoting kind of raising awareness and helping debunk certain very viral claims. The question is, what can we do? Okay, we can do two things. We can try to help the manual fact checkers, or we can try to automate the entire process. And I can make a parallel to the machine translation technology. So in machine translation, I can say, look, I'm going to do a full machine translation. This is something like Google Translate, or I'm going to do translation memory. Translation memory is something that makes human translators more productive, okay? So again, the vast majority of the work has been focusing on automating the entire process, but I believe that it's also important to try to help the fact checkers. And this is something that we have been doing. So we have been doing, we have been running this Clef fact check, check.wap for 4 years now. And by the way, if somebody has interest to participate, it's still open. And as part of that, last year we had a round table where we invited the Full Fact, which is the leading fact-checking organization in the UK, and Neutral, the leading one in Spain, and Fatabiano, the leading one in Jordan, in the Arab world, and have been discussing what fact-checkers want. And I have borrowed this website from David Corney from Full Fact. And here's the list, right? Number one is checkworthiness. What is interesting to fact check? There are so many claims made in social media or in mainstream media and so on and so forth. And the second thing is, was this previously fact checked? As I said, it takes really a lot of time to fact check a claim. So you might want to, before you waste your time, you might want to check whether something was previously fact checked. And then you want tools to help you to find relevant information that helps you fact check the claim. And yes. And if you want to read more about this, we have actually just published an article about this at QCRI on automatic fact-checking technology for assisting human fact-checkers. And as I said, we have been running this check.lab at Clef, where we have been really focusing on those problems that are typically neglected by the research community, but I mean, they are now becoming mainstream, or they are getting kind of recognized. I mean, those are the steps in a typical fact-checking pipeline. The first thing is, okay, you go and you mine for interesting claims, then you check where it was previously fact-checked, and only after that you look for supporting evidence and you try to fact-check it. And actually, we have the shared task that is running. The deadline to register is April 30th, so if somebody has interest, can still register. And we are featuring different languages. We are featuring Arabic, English, Spanish, Bulgarian. Actually, we have also added Turkish. And for this task, Arabic and English, and we work on tweets, and we also work on political debates. And we also have a classical fake news detection task. And we have some tools for checkworthiness, where you can upload, let's say, a political debate, and it's going to, or an article, and it's going to tell what are the most interesting claims there to fact check. And it works in English, it works in Arabic, and it also can mimic the decision process of different fact-checking organizations. You can say, okay, making predictions similar to those of PolitiFact or factcheck.org and so on. And about detecting previously fact-checked claims, again, we have been working on this problem because journalists told us this is an important problem to work on. And it's something that is really important. You can think of that this is something that can potentially revolutionize journalism because you can put the politician on the spot in real time. So think about it. One problem of fact-checking these days is that it lacks credibility. So suppose that I have a device, and as I'm interviewing the politician, I get something that tells me, okay, oh, he just said something that you know, that my AI tells me it's 96% likely to be false. Can I say, Mr. President, you know, my AI tells me you are telling a lie right now? I mean, you cannot do that, right? You cannot act based on this. Why? Because you don't trust the two. So, but if it tells you, look, the person just said something that has been fact-checked by a reputable fact-checking organization and was found by human fact-checkers to be false. And here's what was said, and here's what they have fact-checked. And then kind of you can like skim it, you can even kind of go and you can even read the, you know, quickly skim the article, and you can actually follow up in real time, right? Or your colleagues can do that if you have communication with them behind the scenes. So that's something that journalists are really, really interested in. And it's also an integral part of fact-checking, of automatic fact-checking. And this is a problem that is becoming more and more important because more and more claims are being fact-checked, and kind of the database of previously fact-checked claims is growing. So probably the actual number I have shown you something like 30,000. The actual number is probably an order of magnitude higher, maybe a few 100,000, but hardly a million. And why, I mean, is this going to work? Well, it does. Actually, politicians are known to repeat the same claims over and over again. And partly it's because of human nature, right? I mean, you, if you know somebody for a while, you know that they're going to tell the same things over and over again. I mean, they're going to say the same jokes. I mean, or politicians, they have some ideas and they kind of keep talking about them regardless of whether they are true or false. But it's also a psychological thing that they are appealing to a familiarity bias, right? So if I keep saying something, you know, a lot, people start believing it. And of course, doing this manually might not scale. So we have seen just 30,000 claims. Okay, as I said, probably the actual number is an order of magnitude higher, but not super high. We might want to do also fully automatic fact checking in many cases. That's something that we might want to have. And here I have some schema of the possible components of such kind of system. So that's a system that we built last year. And here you have, okay, so you have a claim and you want to track it, how it evolves over time. You want to see who agrees or disagrees with it. Then you want to see how those people are connected between themselves, and you know, who is friend with whom, who is following whom, who is retweeting whom, and so on and so forth. And you also want to know if those tweets are actually pointing to articles that elaborate on the claim, whether this article is actually factual, whether it resides on a trustworthy website, and also kind of what is you also want to model the connections between those websites, who is connected to whom. And it's kind of a heterogeneous graph, right? It has different kinds of relations over time, relations between tweets, relation between tweet and user, relations between users, relation between tweet and an article, relation between article and website, and relations between websites, right? And that's a complex heterogeneous graph, and you can make inference based on the graph and try to come up with an idea whether the claim is true or false. And there are similar kind of proposals that have more or less some of those elements together. And yeah, that's a paper that got the best paper award at CIVICA last year. Okay, so let me kind of ask a question. Can we fact check every claim in the world, right? I mean, regardless of whether this is done manually or automatically. And the answer is, of course, not. And I mean, how do you do fact checking these days? Well, if it's a claim like the economy of the US grew by 10% last year, that's something that you can fact check easily. You can fact check using Wikipedia or some statistical information from somewhere, and it's kind of easy. But if the claim is there was a bomb in this street in this little town, well, I mean, there's really no previous information. And how do you check this claim, right? I mean, well, you need to see how mainstream media are going to write about it, or how users are going to react to it on social media, right? And kind of try to come up with an idea about that. Well, now the question is, what is happening with true and false claims in social media? And so there was this study by MIT Media Lab in 2018 in Science, which is quite famous, that has looked into every single Twitter claim that has been fact-checked at that point, and has been looking into how much it propagates in Twitter. And they find that it goes much further and spreads much faster than true claims, right? And there's another study that is much less famous, but I find it really, really important, that shows that the lifetime spread of some very viral fake news happens in the first 10 minutes, okay? Which means that we really, really need to react fast. And as I was giving you the example, right? I mean, suppose that it's a claim about some event that happens right now. I mean, it's gonna take definitely more than 10 minutes for websites to go and to write an entire article about it, or for major news agencies to say something about it. And it also takes time for users to react. So yeah, and what can you do in this situation, right? If you really, really want to react fast, well, what you can do is what I'm kind of proposing is what we have been proposing here is to look at the source, okay, kind of to move it at a higher granularity instead of trying to check whether this claim is false or whether this article is fake news or not. Actually, to look into the source and can I trust this source or not? And if you think about it, there is, this is what journalists do, right? They are asking, are there 2 or 3 independent sources that are trustworthy, that actually support the claim? I mean, also you can look into, okay, if a bad website supports a claim, that's bad signal. If a good source supports the claim, that's kind of good signal. I mean, we have seen that the reputation of the source is something that is part of the inference graph that I have been showing you, right? And the good thing about having something on a source, kind of, we have been looking really into websites, but you can do the same thing for users. We don't work on profiling users for ethical reasons, but in principle, we can do it. We have been looking into websites, but profiling websites is very important because, look, if you just have the claim and they're just if you don't really put a link to a website where you elaborate on the claim, it's going to be perceived just like a rumor, right? And because there's no clear source, so the credibility of the claim is not so good. So, but if you put it on a website now, you need to have a website that is ready and sitting there. You cannot really make a new fake news website for every single fake claim that you're making. No, you're going to reuse them. And what we can do is to fight the problem, we can actually go and you can profile in advance a large number of websites. And next time you put a claim on the web, the moment when you kind of want to turn it from rumor into something more influential, you want to put a link to an article on a website. And if we have your website in our list, we can actually tell immediately whether this is a trustworthy, whether it's coming from a trustworthy website or not. And I like to say that we can detect in this way the news before it was even written, because the moment when you write it, the moment when you put it on the website and you put a link to this website, we can immediately say, okay, we know this website. Okay. And again, this is what journalists do. So it's an idea that actually makes a lot of sense. And it moves to a higher granularity, right? I mean, there are much less websites and there are many more claims that one can make. Now, another question, I hear like asking many questions. Another question is, can you win the war on fake news? Okay. So actually 2 years ago, I was invited by the Interparliamentary Assembly together with 2 other experts. And for 3 hours, members of parliament from several hundred members of parliament from different countries around the world have been asking us questions, what kind of legislation we can pass possibly to deal with the problem once and for all. And of course, the certain kind of legislation is definitely helpful. So in many countries, certain kind of hate speech is illegal, or there are rules that apply when it comes to political advertisements in mainstream media that extend also to social media and to the web. But really, it's a complex problem that really requires the effort of also of journalists, of fact checkers, of international organizations, and we researchers are building different kinds of tools and raising awareness. But if you think about it, the only solution that I'm aware of that actually has worked in practice is media literacy. And the only example that we know so far is the example of Finland. So this was everywhere in the news in May 2019, that Finland has officially declared that they have won the war on fake news. It took them about 5 years. They started after the events in Crimea. They somehow felt threatened, and they launched a massive media literacy campaign targeting at all levels of the population, primarily the schools. So they are teaching students that, okay, if something makes you very angry, there's probably something fishy. You should not believe everything in social media. You should not kind of share it. If there is this image that looks suspicious, you can do reverse image search and things like that. And so there's this graph about media literacy in Europe, and you can see that Finland, of course, is famous for its quality of its education system, and you see that they are kind of #1 in media literacy across Europe, according to a study from 2 years ago. By the way, there was a new study, the new version of this study published about a couple of weeks ago, but I couldn't really find a graph about it to show you the results. And basically, the more you go to the north and to the west, the better the picture is. The more you go to the south and the east, the worse the picture gets. But again, if you think about it, the media literacy is, in my opinion, and the example of Finland shows that it actually works. And it's in my view the best it's not really a short-term solution, but it's like a mid and long-term solution to the fake news. And to me, one possible goal that we can try to aim for is to get more countries in the state where Finland is. And we are not going to eradicate the problem. The fake news is here to stay, but we can try to make it irrelevant, right? So that it doesn't really bother us that much. If you think about it, I'd like to see the fake news to go the way of spam. Spam 20 years ago was a big problem. And these days, it's still here, but it's really not that bad. Things are under control. So I think that it's a reachable goal. It's a very real objective to try to get there. And media literacy is, again, it's a complex problem. There are many elements of that. You also need the cooperation of the social media companies because it's in their platforms where the spread is going on. But good media literacy campaigns can really help. And that was also, I mean, we started the Tanbih project before the example of Finland, but we had a very similar situation, a kind of motivation. Our goal is to limit the impact of disinformation, propaganda, and media bias by making users aware of what they're reading and promote media literacy and critical thinking. And it's a mega project at the Qatar Computing Research Institute, and here you have some people that work or have worked on the project. It spans different groups, and it's also developed in cooperation with MIT. Him also working with plenty of people from the Sofia University on that, and they have different collaborations with we have been working, as I said, a lot with MIT. We're working closely with Al Jazeera. We had projects with RT, Associated Press. These days we're working with Facebook and United Nations and some other partners. Neutral, which is a fact-checking organization in Spain, and so on. And yeah, we have been part of some projects. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about how we can actually profile websites in advance, right? So how can we detect the bias and the factuality of reporting? And again, it's not just about factuality; it's also about bias. And bias, it can be defined in two different ways. One is left, center, right. The other one is bias with respect to specific topics. For example, do you agree that global warming is a big problem or not? Or do you think that COVID-19 is a real threat or it's made up or something like that? And so going to the website level, it's nice because I'm really can look into many different information sources, and I don't really need to make a decision based on one piece of information, just one short claim. I can actually go and I can really take a few hundred or a few thousand publications from the target website. And we organize this around three questions. One is what was written. So as I said, it's a few hundred articles by this target news outlet. And also what is there in its Twitter profiles and how they self-represent there. If they have a YouTube channel, what is there in their videos? We are kind of looking into not only what they say, but how they say it. A lot of emotions can be detected from the speech signal. And who reads it? We're looking into who are the followers and in social media of those news outlets, and also what is written about it. For example, what is there about them in Wikipedia. And we're looking into other things. We're looking into audience overlap between different websites. We're looking into the images that they contain, and so on and so forth. And so just like to give you some high-level idea about how we can profile websites. Well, I mean, the first thing is really looking into the text. You can look into, is there a connection between the title and the body? In many cases, people don't bother to have much of a connection for different reasons. It can be a clickbaity title, or it can be that, you know, if you post it in social media, people are going to just see the first 2 or 3 lines anyway, and many people are going to just share it further even without reading it. And then it kind of, the length and complexity are important. And the reason is that, okay, it's actually hard to write fake news. You have to make things up, which means that you probably write something short or you become repetitive, and those things can be detected. And then in order to work, you need to appeal to emotions. You kind of need to use propaganda techniques. I'm going to talk about this more in a bit. And if there's a Wikipedia page, you want to see what is there about them. So for example, here about the National Review, you say it's a conservative magazine. So that's not about factuality, that's about bias. It tells us that, you know, that probably has a right-leaning bias. And it's something that you can extract automatically from this text. And then you can look into their Twitter account, how they self-represent, do they even have one, and it's very important what is here. So for example, here, see there's no link to the website, which is kind of strange. And here it says Crusader Republican, take back our country, MAGA, America first. Again, this doesn't tell us much about factuality, it tells us about bias, left and right bias. And there's connection between factuality and bias. If you are a little bit biased, that's fine. If you are very, very biased, then kind of factuality becomes secondary for you. And I'm going to show you a graph about this in a bit. And then you can look into the URL, the structure of the URL of the website. So if you have abcnews.com.co, that's fishy. Or if you have like angrypatriotmovement.com, Alternative Media Syndicate, 100% Fed Up, those are not serious names of reputable news organizations, right? So if you can chop it into meaningful words like that. And as I said, you can also analyze the YouTube channels, and you can look into the speech signal. You can also look into their audience in Facebook. So for example, Facebook profiles its audience and exposes this through its advertisement API. So for example, I can go and I can say, I want to show an advertisement to Fox News users that are liberal. And I'm going to get an estimation of 440,000 people that are Fox News, interacting with Fox News content and that are liberal. And if I say, okay, what if I want to show this advertisement to very conservative people, then it's going to have, okay, you can reach 2.3 million, right? And that's something that they are giving those estimations to people that post advertisements, and you can actually go and collect those. And we are getting them, and we're trying to use them. We're also analyzing social media. We're looking into Twitter. For example, we're trying to profile media with respect to specific topics. So for example, on which side, left or right of the debate they are with respect to climate change or immigration or COVID-19. And the way that we are doing this, we are finding what are the most influential users on both sides of the debates, and which media they are citing in the context of the conversation when they're discussing the topic in support of their argument. And from there, we try to infer something about the target medium. And of course, you can aggregate this kind of information, the bias with respect to specific topics to come up with a bias, left, center, right bias at the medium level. We have put a system we have put several versions of a system that puts those things together. We are getting data from Media Bias Fact Check, who are profiling about 3,000 websites, and for different topics, and for two things, for factuality and for bias. And basically they are saying here you have New York Times, it says it's center left and it's high factuality. Looking into what they have published, the articles they have published is something that gets you, this is for political ideology, left, center, right bias. You get 81% F1 score, the baseline is 19. Actually, everything that I have been talking about, Wikipedia, YouTube, Twitter followers, Facebook, and so on, helps. Of course, the articles they publish is the most important thing, but when you put everything together, you get extra boost. So factuality is a harder problem. You know, before we had 80-something% F1, here we have 61 something, right? And the baseline is about the same. And again, every single source helps, and the articles are the most important one. And when you put everything together, you get a boost. And as I told you, there is a connection between factuality and bias. So this is the media bias chart. It's a very nice one. You can go and you can check it on this website. And the higher you are, the more factual you are. And here's the left and here's the right. And here you see kind of the extreme left are low in factuality, the extreme right are low in factuality. And the kind of the least biased are kind of the highest in factuality. And you see here Associated Press, Reuters, Bloomberg, and so on. And this means that it probably makes sense to model factuality and bias together. And also you probably want to model this in ordinal regression, because if I confuse, my classifier tells me that a high factuality website is low factuality, that's a big mistake. If it tells me it's a mixed factuality, that's kind of smaller mistake. And maybe I want to take this into account. So it makes sense to try to model factuality and bias together, and also to have auxiliary tasks like centrality, hyperpartisanship, and to model those on different point scales. So here we're looking at the mean absolute error. So here the smaller number is better, and you see that if you want to predict factuality, as you start adding auxiliary tasks, your error drops. Okay, I have been telling you about so far about the factuality part and a little bit about the bias part, but let's talk a little bit about the intent, right? And here a term that is useful is propaganda. Now, disinformation had two components. One, that something is true, that something is false, and second, that it's that it has harmful intent. Propaganda also has two components. One is somebody is trying to convince us of something, and second, that it actually has a purpose, has a predefined goal. And so the propaganda, there has been a lot of work that has been looking into, is this article propaganda or not? Or is this website propaganda or not? But we have decided to go and to study the nature of the phenomenon. And we looked into the specific propaganda techniques that are being used in text. So for example, you have things like name calling or slogans, or different kinds of appeal to emotions. So for example, here, Greta Thunberg is saying, okay, 200 species are getting extinct every day. This is actually appeal to fear. Now, if you pay attention, propaganda is not good, it's not bad. It's not true, it's not false. It's not part of the definition. The definition was somebody's trying to convince us of something, and second, doesn't have purpose. Okay, so I'm not saying here that Greta Thunberg is doing something bad. I mean, propaganda can be good. It can be a good propaganda that the government wants to convince the population to get vaccinated. And as I said, we looked into different techniques for that. And here we have certain models. I'm going to skip this and I'm going to show you on applications that we have actually built. And you can go and you can actually try it. It's the Puerto System. And when you give it a text, it would go and it would highlight for you the specific propaganda techniques that are used there. And we have 18 techniques. Half of them are certain kind of emotional manipulation, and half of them are logical fallacies, things like strawman or whataboutism or red herring or black and white fallacy and stuff like that. And here you see, we'll pursue any aggressor, that's appeal to fear. Latest outrageous attempts, that's loaded language. Or we have Congress will do our job to uphold the Constitution, defend our national security, and protect the American people. So here we have flag waving, which is appeal to patriotic feeling. We had an actual working system on that, a demo that was runner-up for Best Demo Award at ACL last year. And we had two shared tasks on that. Actually one of them also was a runner-up for Best Paper Award for a shared task. And currently we're working, by the way, together with Facebook to study the propaganda techniques in memes, which is because the images, a lot of images are much more influential. They are much further shared in social media. And we're looking into the specific techniques that are used there. So for example, if you look here just in the text, I hate Trump, oh, most terrorists do. If you ignore the image, you have worded language for hate, and you have terrorists, which is name calling, only those two techniques. But if you also add the image, you have smears towards Ilhan Omar, and you have reduction ad Hitlerum, which is, okay, if bad people hate Trump, this means that hating Trump is a bad thing, right? Because bad people do it. That doesn't make sense logically. That's a logical fallacy. Yeah, and we have kind of studying, propaganda in memes. And the last thing that I want to tell you is more recent work that we have been looking. We have been looking into fighting the COVID-19 epidemic, and we have been looking into modeling the perspective of journalists, fact checkers, social media platforms, policymakers, and the society. The World Health Organization early on, since February last year, started saying that we are not just fighting a pandemic, we are fighting an infodemic. And an infodemic is it's a blending of the political disinformation together with the old kind of medical disinformation, if you remember the anti-vaccine movements and so on and so forth. And this is a snapshot from the website of the World Health Organization that I took last February. And they have listed on their website back then the top 5 priorities in fighting the pandemic. And number 2 was actually fighting the infodemic. So it's taken very, very seriously. And again, in February last year, there was this article in MIT Technology Review that was talking about that the coronavirus is bringing us the first social media infodemic. And something that I noticed is that, look, they are not talking only whether it's true or not. They are talking also about panic, racism, and stuff like that. And that motivated us to design a very careful schema. I'm not going showing you here the whole schema, just like giving you some examples, right? We have been looking not only whether it's true or false. We have, of course, rumors, conspiracies, but we're looking also into xenophobic, racist things like, oh, don't eat Chinese food, or spreading panic, oh, Americans are buying guns and, zombie apocalypse is coming, or blaming the authorities, destabilizing the society, or promoting bad cure like boiled garlic water. But also we are looking into good things like advice or important questions being asked, like, is it going to disappear in the summer? And we have like a comprehensive scheme of 7 levels and certain sub-questions here. And the first one is, the first 5 are really looking into checkworthiness. Is this worth fact-checking? And we try to define checkworthiness in social media. And the criteria that we came up with was, okay, does it contain a verifiable factual claim in the first place? Then is it likely to contain false information? Is it of interest to the general public? And then is it harmful to a society, a person, company, and so on? And then based on that, to answer whether it's worth fact-checking or not. And then we had another question which really looks into the reasons. This is has multiple answers about why exactly it's harmful and whether it should get the attention of policymakers and actually why. Yeah, the last 2 questions have 8 and 10 answers. I'm not going to go into the schema. We have this for English and for Arabic. These days, we also have Bulgarian and Dutch being added. Yeah, we have certain numbers where it's propaganda or bot helps, cross-language warning helps. What I'm going to point to you is if you try to look into just the problem of checkworthiness, whether something is worth fact-checking or not, if you just look into this problem, that's what you get in terms of accuracy and weighted F1 score. But if you also want to do multitask learning, where you try also to predict whether it's likely to be false, whether it's of general interest, and whether it's likely to be harmful, you have a huge boost. Okay, so multitask learning is really good. Understanding the nature of the problem. We have some demo on this where you can put a tweet and you can kind of get generic analysis for that. That's also integrated in Infotagion, which is a fact-checking website in the UK. Before I finish, we have been working with journalists. We have been developing tools for journalists. We had in 2019, we had a project with Al Jazeera, RT, Associated Press, and some other partners, and we also got an award for that. We have been developing tools that are helping media to self-monitor their content. And for example, you can upload their video and it can tell you whether it contains claims that have been previously fact-checked and whether these claims are true or false, or it can going to tell whether a specific video is biased, left, center, right. And it's important because in certain countries, they are required by law to give equal representation to both sides during election times, and that's measured to the minute. And the things that we are exposing those as APIs that everybody actually can use. So you can call the API with an article. It's going to tell whether it's propagandistic or not. You can call the API with an article. Is going to tell you the spans of those specific propaganda techniques, where they happen and their type, or is going to tell you for an article where it's left, center, right bias, or it's going to tell you for each sentence how interesting it is to be fact-checked, or is going to tell you whether it contains previously fact-checked claims and which those are. And all the things about COVID-19 disinformation is also there in the APIs. And to conclude, what our Tanbih project has, we have actually put the things into a disinformation-aware news aggregator, which is something like Google News, but lets you see, and maybe in the discussion, like I'll have a chance to show you, shows you as you're reading, it gives you an idea about what you're reading. So for example, if you're reading something that is about climate change and it's skeptical, we can get an idea whether this news outlet was over skeptical about it. And we are building those media profiles, and as I was saying, we can detect the fake news before it was even written. We are doing this media fine-grained propaganda analysis, which I think is great for media literacy because it tells you where the use of specific propaganda techniques are. After interacting a bit with a system like this, I actually remember the techniques, and other people that have interacted, the same thing happened to them. And now I cannot read the news properly anymore, or the social media messages. I just see the propaganda techniques everywhere. And I think that if we get more people to that level, you know, that to change their behavior. And we have been working a lot with to do tools to support journalists and fact checkers. Tools like EasyCheck QWERTY was fact check before. And as I said, we have APIs, we have a browser plugin. As you're reading the news, you can kind of click there and you can get an idea where this information about this source. We have Twitter bot and so on. And I stop here so that we have time for questions.
Great, thank you very much. We have 4 questions in the chat, so I'm just going to take them in order. The first from Carolina Sampa-Geraldo is whether your profiling of sources rather than stories is a strategy that is in line with freedom of the press.
Okay, so, well, okay. I believe that websites, I share the concern. So that's why I'm staying away personally, and kind of in our project, we are staying away from profiling people, even though you can still argue that maybe profiling public figures like politicians, it's probably fair game because you know, it's different things, but I really don't want to develop tools that are going to be able to be used to profile individuals, right? So that's why we have like profiling entire websites. So to me, the websites, they are public information, and yeah, I personally don't see a problem. Yeah.
Okay. Our second question is from Joss Baker. They ask, in your fact-checking pipeline, do you put more weight for the news headline then? What are the most telling features for your fake news classifier from the list in your presentation, that is among length and sentiment and so on?
Well, we are using, sorry, I don't really, we are using machine learning approaches, so we don't really manually set the weight of those attributes, and they are automatically worked. So it might be interesting actually to look and to see what weights are being put to the different attributes. So I cannot really answer this question. I would expect that there'll be relatively high weight there, but we don't really set it manually, so it's automatically worked from the data.
Okay. And a question from Mode Attar. How can we say that it's a genuine source because sometime authentic channels also use some tampered or racial video or contents?
Yes. So I'm not sure what you mean here by authentic, right? So we are kind of trying to predict whether to what extent a source is trustworthy or not. And of course, there's a scale. It's not a black and white decision. So there's like a continuum, it's also it goes also in the other direction, that bad websites often put something, and after it's shared and others have picked it up, they might delete it. Okay, so that if you go on a bad website and if you browse, if you try kind of to do what we are doing, analyze their website, their articles, you might find them, okay, there's some bad content, but there's also some good content, right? They're kind of also often mixing them so that you don't really detect it. It might be important, actually, it has been reported in the literature that it might be important actually to monitor them constantly, right? To see what is going on and also to point attention to what has been deleted.
Right. Well, we have a question from Emmanuel who asks, how do you fact check audio visual content like YouTube videos? Do you also work closely with social media sites to support their fact-checking efforts? And do you think they're doing a good job?
So we have been working, we are using information about the YouTube channels of different organizations, but not really profiling YouTube channels as such. Kind of what we have been doing is, let's say we want to analyze, let's say BBC, whether it's reliable or not, and we would go and we would try to see if they have a YouTube channel, which is something that you can detect maybe from their main web page. They have a link to their YouTube channel, and then you go in YouTube and would look into some of their videos. So we are not really collaborating with YouTube on that. We are looking into something else. We're looking into propaganda detection in memes, which is another kind of multimedia content. And for this, we are working together with Facebook.
Right. Eloise Patton asks, could you share some more about the live fact-checking API that you use for video, the Catalyst project, if she saw correctly?
Yes. So, okay, the Catalyst project was built, it was an application built on top of our APIs. Okay, so the video analysis is not available as an API. So it was as part of the, currently we don't expose as an API, but it's built based on our APIs. Okay, so it's a separate application that is calling our APIs, right? So you need some additional things. You need things to extract the text from the video and then call our API. So you should be able to build it, based on our APIs. But we build it just for the project, and it's not something that is available as an API by itself.
Carolina Geraldo comments just briefly, I see the technology as very interesting for media self-regulation and media literacy. So our final question in the chat is from Philip Darius, who says, Tanbih is a fascinating project. Have you also considered building a media literacy training application that teaches people to assess the factuality of articles? And you might be able to use these as annotations for new articles.
Definitely, we have been looking into this, and we even have a research project under review where we are proposing something along these lines. At some point, we have been even talking to a major social media company about possibly collaborating and creating certain kind of media literacy tools. Something like maybe when you open a new account for the platform, you need to take some media literacy course and kind of learn about, you know, how it can be possibly manipulated. And you only create an account after you have passed the exam. I mean, this didn't really materialize, but I mean, there has been interest, and there have been, and I really think that this is great for teaching media literacy. And if we have time, I can actually show you the system in action. But let's kind of first answer the questions if there are more.
Well, that was the last of our questions from the audience, and we have, I guess, 9 minutes of our slot left. So if you thought that was enough time, then maybe that would be a plan. And if that's a little tight, then
no, definitely that's okay. So that's perfect. So I can show you. Okay. Let me show you the system for, okay. So let me first show you Tanbih, right? The news aggregator in action. And at the same time, let me show you the fine-grained propaganda analysis. Okay, so this Tanbih is a news aggregator, something like Google News. And as you read the news, I can actually click and I can get background information about the source. So for example, I can click here, and this is a media profile that we have been building. And this is here, for example, about BBC, where this is central, it's not really hyper-partisan. And we have analyzed this about propaganda in their content. We have analyzed more than 50,000 articles, and you see that the vast majority of them are very, very likely to be propaganda. Just about 1.5% we believe are very likely to be propaganda. I mean, there might be some propaganda there, or this can be that also our classifier fails, because those are statistical methods, they're not perfect. And then we are looking into framing. So see, every single problem can be reported from different perspectives. If you think of Brexit or COVID-19, it has, let's say COVID-19 has a medical aspect, but it also has a political aspect, has a legal aspect, has quality of life aspect, and so on. And here you see that, for example, BBC is not really political. It's about cultural identity and crime, and only then it kind of has a variety of topics. And then how factual they are. As I said, we are 90% certain that they have high factuality, and that's based on what they write, what is there about them in social media, how they self-represent them in social media, in YouTube, in Facebook, in Twitter, and what is there about them in Wikipedia, and everything together. And this kind of the bias of BBC, you see that they're kind of very central. And in this like on a 3-point scale, they're kind of center left. And is their audience. You see there's a little bit kind of central, a little bit on the liberal side. And that's their, let's say, stance on bias with respect to specific topics. So for example, they're on the concerned side with respect to COVID, for example, on the, you know, the liberal side with respect to immigration and concerned about climate change. So, okay, I can probably, let me see. We have also certain kind of analysis. Let me see if I have COVID. Okay, so if you look into COVID, so here we have an analysis of the media that are reporting on the topic, and you see the top reporting countries in absolute and relative numbers, top propagandistic countries in absolute relative numbers, the same for media, and then how much propagandistic this topic is, and then the framing. So you see that it's really about health and safety as the first thing, but there's also cultural identity, economy, politics, quality of life. And if we have something else, I don't know, let's say, yeah, if you have, for example, oops. Christchurch mosque shooting. That's a different kind of event. And you see there's more propaganda about it. The free content is less. It's about cultural identity, because the guys that were shooting were Christians and they shot Muslims, right? So kind of this was something that was really, and that was not really kind of so much about political, right? So, and it was about crime and punishment. So you see kind of the framing is different. Let me now show you the Puerto System about analysis of the fine-grained propaganda analysis, right? So, and I don't know, I can pick something. Okay, first of all, well, let me show you the specific framing that we are showing. So see, we are highlighting the different propaganda techniques that are showing in text. So for example, here you see this appeal to fear, and this fully automatic analysis. Humanity's ongoing destruction of nature threatens the survival of our species, right? Rapidly warming oceans. Okay, so okay, this was appeal to fear, and so on. And another thing that you can do here, you can observe, for example, how, let's say, CNN talks about COVID-19. And you see it's primarily about worded language, then it's fact waving, and then it's appeal to fear. Appeal to fear is quite high. Slogans are down here. If you compare this, for example, to how Fox News talks about COVID-19, it's quite different. So see, fear is down here. On top is worded language, and then you have slogans, things like "Make America Great Again." Okay, no, sorry, that's flag waving, but there are also slogans. There's some doubt. So it's interesting. By the way, if you look into reputable sources like Reuters, for example, here they are really sorted by propagandistic content. You are still going to see certain propagandistic content coming out, typically in quotations. Okay, the coronavirus outbreak poses a very grave threat to the rest of the world. That's appeal to fear. Okay, and they're citing somebody. No, probably the Director General Tedros of the World Health Organization, right? And you can actually go here and you can submit your own text for analysis. You can type something here, or you can give a URL, and you can actually analyze it. And another thing is, if I'm browsing a website, right, I can, let me see if I can show you. Okay. You can click here. That's our Tanbih. Okay, it takes time to load. Plugin, and it's going to tell you what is the bias of the medium and what is factuality and what are the general frames and what is the propagandistic level of this website, right? And you can click here and you can go and you can get a more detailed analysis of the media profile, you know, about CNN, right? What we know about them. And I stop here in case there are more questions.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Preslav. I think we are out of time unless there are any burning questions. Just looking in the Q&A there. Someone, thank you for sharing about the tools in your work. This is very cool and I will definitely try them out. Well, that sounds like a good place to end on. So I think we've heard about some really interesting stuff today. So thank you so much for that. Let me just share my screen to let everybody know about our upcoming seminars. So for those who are interested in today's topic, we have Chris Bale on May the 19th talking about breaking the social media prism, how to make our platforms less polarizing. So that might touch on some of the similar topics. But the next one coming up in, I think, 2 weeks' time on May the 5th is Dr. Melissa Sands. And she'll be talking about using computer vision to detect racial distancing on city streets. So we look forward very much to seeing you all again. We hope you had a good time today, and please join us for the next CIVICA seminar